This story is about a mom friend who looks down on other people's kids and tries to show off. But when she's told the truth about her friend's son, her face turns pale. Claire has an 8-year-old son who is not the most sociable and doesn't have many friends. However, he recently became friends with a new boy who transferred to his school. When Claire went to a parent-teacher meeting, she saw a familiar face. It was Zoe, her high school classmate. It turns out that Zoe is the mother of the new boy, but Claire has never really liked Zoe. Friend looks down on my son and says, "Your kid looks dumb." But when I reveal the truth, she turns pale. But when I reveal the truth, she turns pale. I have an 8-year-old son named Joseph. He's just like me. He likes to take things at his own pace and is more of an indoor type. The second term started today, and I went to a parent-teacher meeting today. When I got there, someone called out to me, "Hey, is that you, Claire?" When I turned around, I saw a familiar face. Oh my god, Zoe? It was Zoe, my high school classmate. It's been forever. We moved here in September. You look the same, still as plain as ever. She grinned as she said that. Zoe used to be the leader of a group of popular girls. You look the same too, just as pretty as you were back then. To which she replied, "Well, of course I'm beautiful. Women shine when they dress nicely." What are you thinking, wearing jeans and a t-shirt to a parent-teacher meeting? Don't tell me you don't have money to buy nice clothes. I was reminded of my high school days. Zoe and her gang of girls used to mock plain girls like me, so I never really liked her, but I discovered something surprising. It's not like that, but you're also into bargain shopping, huh? I didn't expect that, I said. Then she replied, "What do you mean?" She frowned and didn't understand what I meant. "That dress is from that cheap store, right? The price tag is still attached," I said, as I pointed at the price tag attached to her neckline. Zoe checked her neckline quickly, and her face turned red with anger. "You should have said something sooner." "Sorry, I just saw it now," but she exclaimed, "You're useless," and walked out of the classroom. "Hey, Zoe, the meeting is starting soon." And she's gone. She didn't return to the classroom after that. I feel uneasy about meeting her again after making her angry like that. Claire wanted to distance herself from Zoe, but contrary to her wishes, the children deepened their friendship. One day, Joseph came home with his eyes sparkling, which was unusual, and with a big smile on his face, he said, "Mom, guess what? I became the class illustration team member." Seeing my son's excitement, I stopped cooking dinner and asked him, "Illustration team? What do you do?" Then my son answered loudly, "We draw illustrations and make the classroom look pretty. I'm doing it with Carter." "Carter? That's an unfamiliar name," I asked, and my son replied excitedly, "He's a kid who transferred in from the second term. Carter also likes drawing." Transferred from another school? Could it be Zoe's son? I felt uneasy as I nodded to Joseph, who was happily talking about it. Yeah, we became friends. "Carter likes drawing too. What's wrong, Mom?" Joseph asked, puzzled by my serious expression. I answered so that he wouldn't suspect anything. "Oh, it's nothing. Since Carter just transferred here and might be nervous, be kind to him. Okay, honey?" "Okay," he nodded. However, a few days later, something that Claire had been worried about happened. In the evening, Joseph returned home looking downcast. "Welcome back." "Joseph?" I approached him, worried, and saw that he had tears in his eyes. Feeling anxious for him, I asked, "What's wrong, honey? Did something happen? Are you feeling unwell?" Joseph, shedding tears, told me what happened. "Lately, Carter hasn't been talking to me much. I wondered if I did something wrong, and so asked him. It seems like his mom told him not to be friends with me." "What?" I was surprised by Joseph's words, but he continued and said something even more surprising. "His mom said my mom's poor, unfashionable, and an introvert, so she thinks I will be an unfashionable introvert too." "What the?" I trembled with anger. Joseph went on to say, "But Carter said he wants to be friends with me, but he doesn't know what to do because his mom told him that." "Mom, are we poor? Am I an unfashionable introvert?" I grabbed Joseph, who was crying, by the shoulder and said, "Of course not. We're not poor, and you aren't an unfashionable introvert. You're my precious, adorable pride and joy, so be proud of yourself." "Okay," he nodded as he wiped his eyes. I wanted to do something for the children. After Joseph fell asleep, Claire talked to her husband about it. I said to my husband, who was about to pour himself a drink, "Can you listen to me for a moment?" Joseph came home crying today. What happened? My husband James asked with the slightest surprised look. It seems that Joseph became friends with a boy named Carter who transferred in from the second term, but Carter's mother told him not to be friends with Joseph. James stopped his hand, which was about to open a can of beer for his evening drink, and said, "What? His mother said that?" I continued, "Apparently, she said that I am poor, unfashionable, and introverted, so she thinks Joseph will become unfashionable and introverted too." What the hell? James couldn't hide his surprise either. That boy's mother was my classmate in high school, and I was told the same thing back then. She's like a kid, not a mother, James said in exasperation. But Carter says he wants to be friends with Joseph, and it seems like Joseph wants to be friends too. But what should we do? He was silent for a while, but he came up with an idea. Why don't you talk to the school about it for now? Okay, I'll talk to the homeroom teacher tomorrow, I replied, and consulted with the teacher the next day. Then, a few days later, Joseph, Zoe, Carter, and I were called to the classroom after school. The teacher asked Zoe, "Why did you say such a thing to your son?" She seems dissatisfied with being summoned to the school. "Well, it's the truth, and you know they say children resemble their parents, right?" She gave a slight smile, and the teacher said sharply, "That may be true, and there may be some parts where children resemble their parents based on their involvement, but it doesn't seem like Carter resembles his mother much." "What? What are you trying to say?" she said discontentedly. "Carter doesn't say terrible things to his friends like you do," the teacher answered calmly. "What did you say?" Zoe seems unable to retort the teacher's words. Then the teacher told the children, "You don't have to worry about anything. Just be friends with each other, no matter what anyone says. You are friends." Upon hearing this, the children's eyes sparkled, and they said with smiles, "Yes, we're already friends. We're going to be good friends forever." "Hey, Carter," Zoe said angrily, "please acknowledge the children. Parents have no say in children's friendships. If there are any more incidents that make them sad, I will bring it up at the next parent-teacher conference." The teacher turned to Zoe and spoke sternly. "Fine, Carter, let's go home." Zoe reluctantly agreed and seemed to want to leave the scene quickly with Carter. "Okay, bye everyone." Carter waved his hand to us and followed Zoe. Suddenly, it became quiet around us, and I sighed. "I hope she understands. I did my best, but I don't think I was much of a help," she said apologetically to me. "Oh, no, you did great. Thank you very much for your help. I'm sure the kids appreciate your help too. I will continue to watch over them carefully, so please contact me anytime if anything happens," she said. "Thank you very much," I replied and went home with my son. I told my husband, who had come back from work, about what happened at school that day. "I hope it helps the situation, even if it's a little," James said with a troubled look. While handing him a fork and knife, I said to him, "I think the teacher is also in a tough spot." "Let's wait and see for a while," said James, and I agreed. Yes, the teacher seems willing to cooperate. We decided to keep an eye on the situation. I know I have to continue my relationship with Zoe, and honestly, I feel like it's become a bit of a hassle. Fortunately, Joseph never came home crying again after that. He also seemed to enjoy telling us about Carter's stories. Since the second term had just begun, we prayed that nothing else would happen. However, it was impossible for nothing to happen. The next incident came to Claire's attention soon enough. Towards the end of the second term, the school held an art exhibition where parents could see the handcrafts and paintings that the children had made during the term. The children's works were displayed everywhere, from the gymnasium, the music room, to the corridors and classrooms. "Mom, Dad, you're finally here!" Joseph, who had come to school before us, waved his hands excitedly at the entrance. "I'll be your guide. Let's start with the classrooms." Joseph then led us by the hand and started to show us around. In the classroom were the papers displaying calligraphy and the goals of the second term. "What's that?" I asked, pointing to a paper of an anime character that was not part of the exhibition. "That's what Carter and I drew. It's part of our job as the illustration team. There are many kids in our class who like that anime character, so we drew everyone's favorite illustration together," Joseph proudly replied. As we looked around the classroom, illustrations that the two had probably drawn were displayed everywhere, and I asked, "Wow, did the two of you draw all of these together?" He replied excitedly, Yeah, I had so much fun drawing together with Carter, and we drew so many that we couldn't put them all up in the classroom, so we gave the ones that we couldn't put up to the teacher and the other kids. Both of you are so talented, I praised him with a smile. Then we continued to chat and admire the works on display until we arrived at the gymnasium. There, memories of the summer vacation and the second term were displayed on paintings. This is my painting! Joseph pointed to a painting of a large firework shining in the night sky on a whole sheet of drawing paper. Wow, this is beautiful. It's a painting from the fireworks display we went to before, I said, also remembering the fireworks. You're so talented, Joseph, my husband exclaimed, admiring the painting. Joseph chuckled happily. Carter, what's this painting? It's just blue and white. What's this black grain-like thing? I heard a familiar voice and turned around, and there were Zoe and her husband, William. Carter explained the painting. This is a painting from when we went to the beach. The blue is the sea, the white is the sand, and the black is people. People? Look at this. This is supposed to be a person? How funny, said Zoe, mocking him. He's still in elementary school, so what do you expect? William said, but he was too busy playing with his phone to pay attention to Carter's painting. As I watched Zoe ridicule Carter's drawing and her husband's lack of interest in his own child's work, Carter's smile disappeared. I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer and was about to say something to Zoe and William when Joseph spoke up. Why won't you say something nicer about his painting? Carter worked really hard on this. Before I could say anything, Joseph spoke to Zoe and her husband. Joseph? Carter muttered. Who is this kid? William asked, confused. That's my son. Upon hearing this, Zoe approached Joseph and said with a laugh, It's you again. I told you not to get close to Carter, but you're still pestering us. I just want to be friends with Carter, Joseph replied firmly. But Zoe looked down on him and said, A kid like you, with all those negative vibes, isn't suitable for Carter. Looking at you again today, I can tell you're stupid. A kid with a low IQ and no worth. As I listened to Zoe belittle Joseph, my anger overflowed, but I held it in and said, Do you really mean that? I pointed to a certain spot where Joseph's name and painting were displayed, and beneath the painting was a sign that read, Best in National Competition. Huh? What is that? Zoe looked confused, so I said, It's Joseph's painting. Then Zoe said, What? And pushed through the crowd and looked at the name and the painting several times. Then I said, My child may be quiet and may not have good grades, but he is the best at painting. My husband added, Joseph has a talent and wins some kind of award every year. To which Zoe responded, Every year? She was surprised, and I said with a smile, You might not know since you just moved in, but my son is quite famous. Zoe lifted her eyes in frustration and spat out, How could a painting like this be selected? How can you say a painting like this? Have you even looked at the painting closely? The homeroom teacher intervened and said to Zoe, who was shaking with anger, Your son is in the painting. What? The painting depicted Joseph and Carter happily doing the illustration work in the classroom. The title was Important Friends. The teacher continued, This is a beautiful painting that clearly shows that Joseph and Carter are having fun and enjoying their school life together. Don't you feel anything seeing this wonderful painting? Zoe faltered, and the teacher added, You shouldn't judge people by their appearance, and children can be friends with anyone. Sometimes there may be people who don't get along well, but as adults, isn't it our job to watch over them? Being told that, Zoe was speechless. I'm sorry. At that moment, Zoe's husband came over quickly, looking pale. How can I possibly apologize for all the rudeness my wife has shown? I'm very, very sorry. Although William had not participated in the conversation up until then, he suddenly began to apologize, which surprised me. Hey, why are you apologizing for me? I didn't do anything rude, Zoe complained as she watched her husband apologizing, but he kept apologizing. Then my husband spoke up. Who would have thought? It was your wife after all. I didn't understand what was going on and asked James, Wait, what do you mean? Do you know him? He is one of my subordinates, James answered. What? I was surprised and unintentionally raised my voice. Indeed, my husband was a manager at an IT-related company. I heard the name Carter from my wife, and when the timing of the transfer, I thought it might be you, William. I was expecting a lot from you when you were promoted and came from the branch to the headquarters. I am disappointed." When my husband said that, William's face turned bright red and he said, "I'm terribly sorry. I'll do my best to meet your expectations from now on." James then said, "Don't disappoint me any more than you have already." To which William replied, "I won't, sir." Then James added, "You also have a problem, William. You've been playing with your phone the whole time. That's why I didn't notice, even when I was nearby." William said, "I'm terribly sorry." But James continued, "You don't need to apologize to me. Apologize to your son. Don't take your child's growth and feelings for granted. Take school events more seriously." James raised his voice, but Zoe interjected, "Hey, hold on. Just because he's your boss doesn't mean you have to be a pushover to Claire's husband. You look so lame." William panicked and shouted at her, "Hey, don't say rude things, Zoe. This man is the head of my department." "What? The head?" Zoe, who had just looked down on him, was taken aback. William apologized to his son. "I'm sorry, son. I'll make sure to pay attention next time. So, can you guide us again?" Carter happily nodded and said, "Sure." "Well then, we'll be going now," William said awkwardly. "Thank you, guys. We'll see you later." Carter thanked and waved goodbye to us and the teacher. William apologized to us repeatedly and left with Zoe, who looked embarrassed. The tumultuous art exhibition had come to an end. James and I apologized to the teacher for causing a commotion and went home. That night, while we were having dinner, Joseph suddenly asked his father, "Hey, Dad, is Carter's dad going to be forced to move?" "Carter's dad isn't going to move unless he makes a big mistake at work," he replied kindly. "Really?" Joseph exclaimed. "When he's working, he's very serious and works hard. I also rely on Carter's dad," he said, smiling. "I see. That's good," Joseph said, relieved, and took a bite of his food. The day after the art exhibition, Zoe's husband came to our house again to apologize. However, Zoe was not there, so I asked him, where's Zoe?" "Actually, I asked her to come with me to apologize, but she insisted that she did nothing wrong and refused to come. When I insisted, she got angry and stormed out of the house." William hung his head and continued, "Also, I've been suspicious for a while, but Zoe's infidelity came to light and I had hired a detective. The detective called me during the exhibition, and that's why I was on my phone then." He revealed this shocking fact. "I'm sorry to hear that. I'm also sorry that I said all those harsh things to you without knowing the circumstances," said James. "No, whatever the reason, being on the phone at my son's art exhibition is not a sign of a good father." He seemed to regret his actions. After learning the situation, we agreed to take care of Carter. It has been almost a week since then, but Zoe hasn't returned yet. William had lost patience and was proceeding with divorce proceedings. After that, Carter started to visit our house frequently. We sometimes had dinner together. The reason was because Zoe had left the house. Carter would come to our house with a smile and say, "Hi." So I would reply with a smile, "Welcome, Carter." And he would ask, "Can I do my homework with Joseph today? We have a lot to do." I would say, "Of course, I'll bring some snacks later." He responded with a cheerful, "Yay!" Even though Zoe had left the house, Carter was still energetic. Maybe he was not happy living with Zoe. Zoe and William ended up divorcing 1 month later. Then, one evening, Zoe stormed into my house. "Claire, do something!" She barged into my house without permission when I opened the door. "Hey, don't just barge in like that." "Your ex-husband is my ex-husband's boss, right? Convince him to waive my alimony." She started to say unreasonable things. "What? That's not possible," I replied. "Then tell him to give me custody of Carter. I can't afford such high alimony," Zoe shouted. "Are you relying on child benefits or something?" I asked her. "Yes, it will help a little, won't it?" she answered. "If you plan to take Carter just for that reason, I will never help you," I said firmly. "Wait, who do you think you are, Claire?" It was her usual line. Just then, "Don't talk bad about my mom," Joseph said loudly. "Joseph?" When I turned around, Carter and Joseph were standing there. "We came back together because we wanted to play together today," Joseph said. Then Zoe continued, "That's perfect. Carter, come with me." Carter shook off Zoe's hand as she tried to pull him and said, "No, I don't want to go with you, Mom. I don't want to be with someone who talks bad about Joseph and his mother." "What did you say?" "You always do this. You never understand my feelings. Yesterday was my birthday. You probably forgot, didn't you? She looked surprised when Carter told her that. Oh, she seems to have really forgotten it. I don't want to have anything to do with you, Mom. Go away. Zoe couldn't say anything and left. Later, Carter cut ties with Zoe and is now getting along well with his father. It seems that Carter has become more open and cheerful than before, perhaps because he used to be told many bad things from Zoe. By the way, as for Zoe, she seems to have been abandoned by her affair partner. Due to the compensation money, she apparently came to Carter's house and tried to reconcile, but was rejected by Carter again and went home in a dejected state. We also want to support his family in our own small way and want to continue being friends with them. So, what did you think of the story? We never want to become someone like Zoe, who imposes her own values on others and looks down on people based on their appearance. Has anyone tried to show their superiority over you? It's not a great feeling, is it? By the way, Joseph and Carter will be in the same class next year, and apparently they will continue to work together as illustration team members. Thank you for watching until the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, we would love to hear from you, so leave us a comment in the comment section below. See you in the next video. Goodbye.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.